The bullet tore through Park Jun's shoulder 3 months after their first dance, his body crumpling against Dakia as FBI agents swarmed his father's blood-soaked estate. But their nightmare started the moment this Kenyan nurse touched the hand of Chicago's most dangerous mafia heir at a charity ball. Not knowing his psychotic fiancé Soo Jin would hunt her down, or that his cold-blooded father Min Jun already had assassins watching her family in Nairobi. One dance. That's all it took to turn Dakia's quiet life into a war zone, where loving Park Jun-min meant choosing between her family's survival and a man whose obsessive, calculating mind saw her as the only beautiful thing in his violent world. Don't forget to like and hit that subscribe button as we dive into the world of Park Jun and Dakia. Dakia's feet were killing her. These stupid borrowed heels pinched her toes, and this tight black dress made it hard to breathe. She stood at the edge of the ballroom in some fancy hotel in downtown Chicago, watching rich people laugh and drink expensive champagne like water. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling like frozen stars, and a live band played music that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Girl, stop looking like you want to run," her best friend Zara whispered, grabbing her arm. "We got free tickets to the fanciest charity event in Chicago. Enjoy it." "I'm trying," Dakia said, pulling at her dress, "but I feel like everyone's staring at me." "That's because you're gorgeous," Zara said, winking. "Now stop being boring and let's find you a rich husband." Dakia rolled her eyes. "I came to America to be a nurse, not to hunt for husbands." "You can do both," Zara laughed, disappearing into the crowd toward the food table. Dakia sighed and looked around the room. Men in expensive suits talked about business. Women in designer dresses showed off their jewelry. Everyone here had money, power, and confidence. Meanwhile, Dakia worked 60-hour weeks at the hospital just to pay rent and send money back home to Kenya. She was about to leave when she saw him. He stood alone in the far corner of the ballroom, partially hidden behind a marble pillar. Tall, maybe 6 feet. Perfectly styled black hair. Sharp jawline. He wore an all-black suit that probably cost more than her car. But what caught Dakia's attention wasn't how handsome he was. It was how completely out of place he looked. While everyone else laughed and mingled, this man stared down at the floor tiles, his fingers tapping against his thigh in a steady rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. His lips moved slightly like he was counting something only he could see. Dakia knew that look. She'd seen it at the hospital in patients who got overwhelmed by too much noise, too many people, too much everything. Something pulled her toward him. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was because he looked as uncomfortable as she felt. Or maybe it was those dark, intense eyes that suddenly looked up and locked onto hers. Her breath caught. He didn't look away. Most men glanced at her and then moved on, or stared at her body in a way that made her skin crawl. But this man looked directly into her eyes, studying her face like he was trying to memorize every detail. Before she could think about what she was doing, Dakia walked across the ballroom toward him. Her heart pounded with each step. What was she doing? She didn't just walk up to strange men at parties. But something about him made her brave. "Hi," she said softly when she reached him. He didn't respond, just kept staring at her face, his eyes moving from her eyes to her nose to her lips and back again. His fingers kept tapping that same rhythm against his leg. "I'm Dakia," she tried again. "Park Jun," he said finally. His voice was deep and smooth, but he said his name like he was reading from a script. "This party is pretty boring, right?" Dakia said, trying to make conversation. "There are 347 people in this room," Park Jun said, still not breaking eye contact. "The music is playing at 85 decibels, which is 14 decibels above my comfort level. The lights flicker every 2.7 seconds, which most people don't notice, but I do. So yes, by most definitions, this environment is extremely unpleasant." Dakia blinked. That was the most unusual response she'd ever gotten. "Then why are you here?" she asked. "My father makes me attend these events," Park Jun said. His jaw tightened slightly. "He says I need to be seen, that people need to know I exist." Something sad flickered in his eyes when he mentioned his father. Dakia recognized that look too, the look of someone trying to please a parent who could never be pleased. "Well, I think you'd rather be anywhere else," Dakia said gently. "Me too, honestly." For the first time, Park Jun's expression changed. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. "Your voice," he said suddenly. "It's different from the others. The frequency is lower, calmer. It doesn't hurt my ears like the other voices do." Dakia didn't know if that was a compliment or just an observation, but it made her smile anyway. "Would you like to dance?" The words came out of her mouth before she could stop them. Park Jun's eyes widened. "I don't dance. I don't like being touched, and I can't predict other people's movements, which creates anxiety." "What if I promise to be very predictable?" Dakia said, holding out her hand. "And you don't have to hold me close. We can keep space between us." Park Jun stared at her hand for a long moment. His fingers stopped tapping. She could almost see him thinking, calculating, deciding. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. The moment their skin touched, electricity shot through Dakia's body. Park Jun flinched slightly but didn't pull away. "Your hand is warm," he said, quietly. 98.7 degrees Fahrenheit. That's normal body temperature, but it feels warmer than that. They walked to the edge of the dance floor, away from the crowd. The band played a slow song, something jazzy and smooth. Dakia placed one hand on Park Jun's shoulder and kept their other hands clasped. She left space between their bodies just like she promised. "Just follow my lead," she whispered, nice and slow. They started moving. Park Jun was stiff at first, his body rigid with tension. But Dakia moved gently, keeping her steps simple and predictable. 1 step, 2 steps, turn. 1 step, 2 steps, turn. After a minute, Park Jun started to relax. His movements became smoother. He was actually a good dancer once he found the pattern. "You're from Kenya," Park Jun said suddenly. It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" "Your accent, the specific way you pronounce certain vowels. Also, the style of your hair. The beads are traditional Yoruba design." Dakia laughed, surprised. "You know about Yoruba beads?" "I know about many things," Park Jun said. "My brain stores information differently than other people's brains. I remember everything I see or hear, every face, every fact, every pattern." "That sounds like a gift," Dakia said. "Sometimes," Park Jun said, his eyes growing distant. "Other times it feels like a curse, especially when I remember things I'd rather forget." They danced in silence for a moment. Dakia felt completely comfortable in his arms despite how strange this whole interaction was. There was something honest about Park Jun, something real. He didn't play games or try to impress her. He just was. "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen," Park Jun said suddenly, his eyes locked on hers. Dakia's heart skipped. "You don't have to say that." "I'm not saying it to be polite," Park Jun said, his voice completely serious. "I'm saying it because it's a fact. I've seen approximately 47,000 faces in my lifetime. Yours is the most aesthetically pleasing combination of features I've encountered. Your bone structure is mathematically perfect. But more importantly, when I look at you, my heart rate increases by 23 beats per minute. My palms sweat despite the temperature being comfortable, and I feel something in my chest that I've never felt before." No one had ever talked to Dakia like this. It should have sounded clinical, weird even. But the raw honesty in Park Jun's voice made it the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to her. "What does that feeling mean?" she whispered. "I don't know," Park Jun admitted, "but I want to find out." He pulled her slightly closer, and Dakia let him. They were barely inches apart now, still moving to the music. She could smell his cologne, something expensive and clean. Could see the small scar above his left eyebrow. Could feel the heat radiating from his body. Park Jun's eyes dropped to her lips. I've read that kissing releases dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin in the brain, all chemicals that create feelings of happiness and attachment. Have you ever tested that theory? Dakia asked breathlessly. No, Park Jun said. I've never wanted to before. And now? Now I want to kiss you more than I've ever wanted anything in my entire life. Dakia's pulse raced. Then maybe you should. Park Jun leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away, but Dakia didn't move. Couldn't move. She was frozen in place, waiting, wanting. Their lips were about to touch when a rough hand grabbed Park Jun's shoulder and yanked him backward. What the hell do you think you're doing? A cold voice said. A tall Korean man in a dark suit stood between them. His face was hard, his eyes like ice. Behind him, 3 more men in suits appeared, forming a wall. Dae, Park Jun said, and something like fear crossed his face. I was just dancing. Your father wants you home. Now. Dae's eyes flicked to Dakia with pure disgust. Step away from my boss's son. Boss? Dakia repeated, confused. Park Jun reached for her hand. Wait, I need to explain. But Dae grabbed Park Jun's arm hard, pulling him away. We're leaving. Don't make this difficult. Let him go, Dakia said, anger flooding through her. He's not a child. Dae turned to her with a smile that made her blood run cold. You have no idea what you just got yourself into, girl. If you're smart, you'll forget you ever met him. Park Jun struggled against Dae's grip, his eyes locked on Dakia. I'll find you again, he said urgently. I promise. I've memorized everything about you. Your face, your voice, the exact shade of your eyes. I'll find you. Then they were gone, dragging Park Jun through the crowd toward the exit. People moved out of their way like they were afraid. Dakia stood frozen on the dance floor, her heart pounding, her mind racing. What just happened? Zara appeared at her side, her face pale. Oh my God, Dakia. Do you know who that was? His name is Park Jun, Dakia said numbly. That's Park Jun Min, Zara whispered, looking around nervously. His father is Min Jun, the Korean mafia boss who controls half of Chicago's underground. Girl, you just danced with the most dangerous family in the city. Dakia's blood turned to ice. She looked toward the exit where Park Jun had disappeared, and her stomach dropped. Because standing in the doorway, watching her with cold, calculating eyes, was an older Korean man in an expensive gray suit. He looked exactly like Park Jun, but older, harder, and infinitely more terrifying. Min Jun. Their eyes met across the crowded room. He didn't smile, didn't move, just stared at her like she was a problem he needed to solve. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Dakia shaking in the middle of the dance floor, wondering what she had just gotten herself into. Dakia couldn't sleep. 3 days had passed since the charity event, and she couldn't stop thinking about Park Jun, those intense dark eyes, the way he held her hand like it was something precious, the honest, strange way he talked that made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced before. But every time she closed her eyes, she also saw his father's cold stare, remembered Zara's terrified whisper about the MAFIA, felt the fear that came with knowing she'd stepped into something dangerous. Forget about him, she told herself for the 100th time, staring at her ceiling in the dark. He's from a world you don't belong in. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from an unknown number. Your favorite color is purple. You wear a small silver cross necklace that belonged to your grandmother. You have a small scar on your left wrist from when you fell as a child. You drink your coffee with 2 sugars and too much cream. You walk to work every morning at exactly 6:47 a.m. I told you I'd find you. I memorized everything. Dakia's heart hammered against her ribs. She should be scared. This was stalker behavior. But instead, butterflies exploded in her stomach. She typed back with shaking fingers. How did you get my number? I have access to resources. When I want to find someone, I find them. Can I see you? Dakia stared at the message. Every logical part of her brain screamed to say no. To block the number. To pretend that dance never happened. Her fingers typed yes before her brain could stop them. The next morning, Dakia walked to work like always. The Chicago streets were busy with people rushing to their jobs, cars honking, the smell of coffee and exhaust in the air. She just turned the corner near the hospital when she saw him. Park Jun stood on the sidewalk, looking completely out of place in an expensive black coat and designer shoes. He held a single purple orchid in his hand. People rushed past him on both sides, but he stood perfectly still, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on her. The world seemed to slow down. Dakia walked toward him, her heart racing. You came. I said I would. Park Jun replied simply. He held out the orchid. Purple is your favorite color. Orchids last longer than roses. They're also more mathematically interesting in their structure. Dakia took the flower, a smile spreading across her face despite herself. Thank you. It's beautiful. You're beautiful, Park Jun said, staring at her face the same intense way he had at the party. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. It's interfering with my sleep patterns. I've calculated that I've thought about you approximately 4,000 times in the past 72 hours. That's a lot of thinking, Dakia said softly. It's never happened before, Park Jun admitted. Usually I think about patterns, numbers, systems. But now I think about the way your hand felt in mine, the sound of your laugh, the exact shade of your eyes, which is a unique combination of brown and gold that I've never seen before. Dakia felt her cheeks grow warm. A group of nurses walked past them into the hospital, and one of them gave Dakia a curious look. I have to get to work, Dakia said reluctantly. I know. Your shift starts at 7. You work in the emergency department. You usually leave at 5 unless there's an emergency. Park Jun paused. Can I see you after work? There's a quiet coffee shop 2 blocks from here. They have good coffee and the lighting is soft, not harsh. I checked. Dakia knew she should say no, knew this was crazy, but looking into Park Jun's hopeful eyes, she couldn't refuse him. Okay, she said. 5:30. Park Jun's face lit up with that almost smile she remembered. I'll be there at 5:29. Dakia laughed and hurried into the hospital, clutching her orchid. She looked back once and saw Park Jun still standing there, watching her until she disappeared through the doors. Work dragged by slowly. Dakia couldn't concentrate. She kept thinking about Park Jun, wondering what it would be like to really get to know him. Between patients, her coworker Maya leaned over. Girl, who is that fine man outside? He watched you walk in like you were the only person on the planet. Just someone I met, Dakia said, trying to sound casual. Just someone? Maya laughed. Honey, that man looked at you like you were oxygen and he was drowning. Get you a man who looks at you like that. At 5:30 exactly, Dakia walked into the coffee shop Park Jun mentioned. It was small and cozy, with soft jazz playing and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. Park Jun sat at a corner table, far from other people, with 2 cups of coffee already waiting. 2 sugars and too much cream, he said as she sat down. I hope I got it right. Dakia took a sip. It was perfect. How do you take yours? Black, no sugar. I don't like altering the natural taste of things. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Dakia studied Park Jun in the soft light. He was even more handsome than she remembered. But it was more than that. There was something magnetic about him. Something that pulled her in. Tell me about yourself, she said finally. The real stuff, not just facts. Park Jun's fingers tapped against his coffee cup. 1, 2, 3, 4. What do you want to know? Everything. What's it like being you? Park Jun was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Imagine seeing patterns in everything: numbers, colors, sounds. They all connect in ways most people don't notice. It's beautiful sometimes, but it's also overwhelming. Too much noise feels like knives in my ears. Unexpected touch feels like electricity burning my skin. I can't read people's expressions the way others can, so I'm always guessing if I'm saying the right thing or making people uncomfortable. You don't make me uncomfortable, Dakia said softly. You're different, Park Jun said, his eyes meeting hers. With you, I don't have to guess. You say what you mean. Your face matches your words. It makes everything easier. What about your family? Dakia asked carefully. Your father? Park Jun's expression hardened. My father sees me as broken, defective. He wanted a strong son who could take over his business empire. Instead, he got me. Someone who can't handle loud parties or make small talk or lie convincingly. He's spent my whole life disappointed. You're not broken, Dakia said fiercely. You're just different. And different is good. My father doesn't think so, Park Jun said quietly. He keeps me hidden most of the time, locked away like an embarrassment. The only time I'm useful to him is when he needs my brain for something. I can see patterns in financial records, in people's behavior, in systems. I can find connections that other people miss. So he uses me for that, then puts me back in my cage. Dakia's heart broke for him. She reached across the table and took his hand. Park Jun flinched slightly at the contact but didn't pull away. You're not in a cage right now, she said. No, Park Jun agreed, his thumb stroking across her knuckles. Right now, I'm exactly where I want to be. They talked for hours. Park Jun told her about growing up isolated, about having only books and computers for friends, about how he taught himself 7 languages and could solve complex math problems in his head, but couldn't figure out how to make friends at school. Dakia told him about Kenya, about leaving everything she knew to come to America, about working herself to exhaustion to send money home to her family, about feeling invisible in a country where people either ignored her or exoticized her. I don't understand the concept of exotic, Park Jun said, tilting his head. To me, you're just perfect. Like finally finding the missing piece of a puzzle I didn't know I was solving. Dakia's breath caught. Park Jun, I need to be honest with you. This scares me. Your father, your world, all of it. I'm just a nurse. I don't know anything about that life. Good, Park Jun said firmly. That life is ugly and violent and full of lies. You're everything that world isn't. You're honest and kind, and you help people instead of hurting them. That's why I can't stay away from you. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. I know this is fast. I know it doesn't make logical sense. But I've analyzed every variable, every possible outcome, and in every scenario, you're the only thing that makes sense to me. Dakia's heart pounded. What are you saying? I'm saying I want you, Park Jun said simply. Not just for today or tomorrow. I want to know everything about you. I want to be the person you call when you have a bad day. I want to learn what makes you laugh and what makes you cry. I want to touch you without flinching because your touch is the only one that doesn't hurt. Park Jun, Dakia whispered. Tell me you feel it too, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Tell me I'm not alone in this. Dakia looked into his eyes and saw raw vulnerability there. This man who was so guarded, so careful with the world, was opening himself up completely to her. You're not alone, she said. I feel it too. Park Jun stood up and moved around the table. He pulled Dakia to her feet and cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. I'm going to kiss you now, he said, like I should have at the party. Yes, Dakia breathed. His lips met hers, and the world exploded into sensation. The kiss started soft, but quickly deepened into something desperate and hungry. Park Jun kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back so he could taste her more deeply. Dakia gripped his coat, pulling him closer. She'd been kissed before, but never like this. Never with this kind of intensity and focus. Park Jun kissed her like she was the only thing that existed in his universe. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Park Jun rested his forehead against hers. "My heart rate is at 127 beats per minute," he said. "That's dangerously high for resting state, but I don't care. I want to feel like this forever." Dakia laughed breathlessly. "You're impossible." "So I've been told," Park Jun said, that almost smile crossing his face. "Come home with me, please. I want to show you my world. The real one, not my father's." Dakia knew she should be careful. Knew she should take this slow. But looking into Park Jun's eyes, she couldn't say no. "Okay," she whispered. They left the coffee shop hand in hand. Park Jun led her to a sleek black car parked down the street. But as he opened the door for her, a voice cut through the night. "How touching." Dakia's blood turned to ice. She turned and saw 3 men in dark suits walking toward them. The one in front was Dae, the man who dragged Park Jun away from the party. "Your father wants to see you," Dae said to Park Jun. "Both of you." "No," Park Jun said, moving protectively in front of Dakia. "Leave her alone." "That's not how this works," Dae said coldly. "The boss doesn't make requests. He gives orders, and he wants to meet the woman who's been distracting his son." 2 other men moved forward, surrounding them. Dakia's heart raced with fear. "It's okay," Park Jun said quietly to her. "I won't let them hurt you." But as they were escorted to a different car, Dakia wasn't sure if that was a promise Park Jun could keep. The car ride felt like driving into hell. Dakia sat pressed against Park Jun in the back seat while Dae drove through Chicago's streets. They left the busy downtown area and headed into a neighborhood Dakia didn't recognize. The buildings got bigger, more spread out. Gates and high walls surrounded massive properties. "Where are we going?" Dakia asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "My father's estate," Park Jun said quietly. His hand found hers in the dark and squeezed. "Don't show fear. He feeds on fear." The car pulled through iron gates into a sprawling property. The house was huge, modern, and cold-looking, with tall windows that gleamed like dark eyes. Security guards stood at every entrance. Inside was even more intimidating. White marble floors, expensive art on the walls, furniture that looked too perfect to actually sit on. Everything was clean and precise, and completely unwelcoming. Dae led them down a long hallway to a set of double doors. He knocked twice and pushed them open. The office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Behind a huge desk sat Min Jun, Park Jun's father. He looked up from papers he was reading and his cold eyes landed on Dakia. She fought the urge to step back. "So," Min Jun said, his voice quiet but somehow terrifying, "this is the woman who has my son so distracted." "Father," Park Jun started, but Min Jun held up one hand. "I didn't give you permission to speak." Min Jun stood and walked around his desk. He was shorter than Park Jun but somehow more intimidating. He moved like a predator, all controlled power. "What's your name, girl?" "Dakia," she said, lifting her chin. She wouldn't show fear, wouldn't give him that satisfaction. "Dakia," Min Jun repeated, walking in a slow circle around her. "Kenyan, 26 years old. Nurse at Chicago Memorial Hospital. Been in America for 3 years on a work visa. Sends most of her money back to family in Nairobi. No criminal record. No connections to any rival organizations." Dakia's blood ran cold. He'd investigated her. Knew everything about her. "You've been busy researching me," she said, keeping her voice level. "I research anyone who gets close to my son," Min Jun said. "Park Jun is valuable to me. His mind is worth millions. I can't have him distracted by some random woman looking for a meal ticket." "I don't want his money," Dakia said firmly. "Everyone wants money," Min Jun said dismissively. He turned to Park Jun. "I warned you about forming attachments. Emotions make you weak. Look at you now, bringing this woman into our world, putting her in danger because you can't control yourself. I can control myself perfectly fine, Park Jun said, his voice tight. What I can't control is you treating me like property instead of your son. Minjun's expression didn't change, but something dark flashed in his eyes. You exist because I allow it. Everything you have I gave you. And I can take it all away. He turned back to Dakia, including her. Don't threaten her, Park Jun said, stepping forward. It's not a threat, Minjun said calmly. It's a fact. You have responsibilities, Park Jun, important work to do. This woman is a distraction I can't afford. So I'm going to make this very simple. He looked at Dakia. You will stay away from my son. You will not contact him. You will not speak to him. You will forget he exists. And if I don't? Dakia asked, her heart pounding. Minjun smiled, and it was the scariest thing Dakia had ever seen. Then your family in Nairobi will have some unfortunate accidents. Your mother, your 2 younger brothers, your grandmother who raised you. They'll all suffer because you couldn't follow simple instructions. Dakia felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. You wouldn't. Try me, Minjun said softly. I've done worse for less reason. Father, Park Jun said, his voice shaking with anger. This is wrong. This is necessary, Minjun said. You'll understand someday. Now take this woman home and then come back. We have work to do. Day appeared at the door. Let's go. The ride back to Dakia's apartment was silent. Park Jun held her hand so tight it almost hurt, but neither of them spoke. What was there to say? Minjun had made his position clear. When they pulled up outside her building, Park Jun finally spoke. I won't let him hurt you or your family. How can you stop him? Dakia asked, tears burning her eyes. He's your father. He controls everything. Not everything, Park Jun said. Not this. Not us. He cupped her face, his eyes fierce. I've spent my whole life being his tool, his weapon, his disappointment. But you're different. You're mine. And I protect what's mine. Park Jun, Dakia whispered. Trust me, he said. Please, just trust me for a little while longer. He kissed her hard, desperately, like he was trying to pour all his promises into that kiss. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing. I'll fix this, he said. I swear I'll fix this. Then he was gone, and Dakia was left standing on the sidewalk, her whole world turned upside down. That night, Dakia couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Minjun's cold eyes, his casual threats, kept worrying about her family back home. Should she call them? Warn them? Or would that put them in more danger? Around midnight, her phone buzzed. A text from Park Jun. Look outside your window. Dakia's heart jumped. She went to her window and looked down at the street. Park Jun stood on the sidewalk below, looking up at her. Even from 3 floors up, she could see the intensity on his face. She grabbed her coat and ran downstairs. What are you doing here? She asked, breathless from running. Your father said. I don't care what my father said, Park Jun interrupted. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. I meant what I said. I won't let him control this. Control us. But my family, Dakia said against his chest. I've already taken care of it, Park Jun said. I have connections my father doesn't know about. People loyal to me, not him. Your family will be watched and protected starting tonight. If anyone tries to hurt them, they won't succeed. Dakia pulled back to look at his face. How? I'm not as powerless as my father thinks, Park Jun said. He sees me as broken, so he underestimates me. That's his mistake. He stroked her cheek. I told you I'd protect what's mine. That includes you and everyone you love. Dakia's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief. Why are you doing all this for me? We barely know each other. I know enough, Park Jun said firmly. I know you make me feel human instead of like a machine. I know your voice calms the chaos in my head. I know that for the first time in my life, I want something for myself, instead of just existing in my father's shadow. His eyes bored into hers. I know that I'm falling for you so fast it terrifies me, but I don't want it to stop. Dakia's breath caught. Park Jun. Come upstairs with me, he said suddenly. I don't want to be apart from you tonight. I just want to hold you and know you're safe. Dakia knew she should be cautious, knew this was moving too fast. But standing in Park Jun's arms, feeling his heart beat against hers, she didn't care about caution anymore. Okay, she whispered. They went up to her small apartment. Park Jun looked around at her simple furniture, her secondhand couch, her tiny kitchen. Everything was clean but worn, nothing like the expensive world he came from. I like it here, he said. It feels real, honest. Dakia laughed softly. It's all I can afford. It's perfect because it's yours, Park Jun said. They sat on her couch, and Park Jun pulled her close. They kissed slowly this time, deeply, taking their time. His hand slid under her shirt, warm against her skin. Dakia gasped at the sensation. Is this okay? Park Jun asked, pulling back slightly. Yes, Dakia breathed. Don't stop. They moved to her bedroom, shedding clothes between kisses. Park Jun was careful and attentive, constantly checking that Dakia was comfortable. But there was also a hunger in him, a desperate need that matched her own. When they finally came together, Dakia felt like she was burning from the inside out. Park Jun was intense and focused, studying her reactions, learning what made her gasp and moan. He whispered her name like a prayer, his hands mapping every inch of her body. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, both breathing hard. Park Jun traced patterns on Dakia's bare shoulder, his expression peaceful in a way she'd never seen before. I've never felt like this, he said quietly, connected to someone, like I'm not alone in my head anymore. Dakia kissed his jaw. You're not alone. Not anymore. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms. For the first time since the party, Dakia felt safe. But safety was an illusion. The next morning, Dakia woke up to find Park Jun already dressed, standing by her window with his phone pressed to his ear. His expression was dark. What's wrong? She asked, sitting up. Park Jun ended the call and turned to her. My father knows I was here last night. He's furious. How? Does he know? He has people watching me, Park Jun said grimly. Always has. I thought I'd lost them, but I was wrong. He sat on the bed and took her hands. Dakia, things are about to get dangerous. My father doesn't make empty threats. He's going to try to separate us, and he won't play nice. Then what do we do? Dakia asked. Park Jun's eyes hardened with determination. We fight back. But I need you to trust me, even when things don't make sense. Even when it looks like I'm pushing you away. Can you do that? Dakia searched his face. What are you planning? I'm planning to take my father down, Park Jun said quietly. And I'm going to need your help to do it. The next 2 weeks were torture. Park Jun had explained his plan in whispers that morning in Dakia's apartment. He was working with people who wanted to bring down his father's criminal empire, federal agents who'd been building a case for years, but they needed more evidence, more time. And to get it, Park Jun had to pretend he was following his father's orders, had to pretend he was staying away from Dakia. It'll look like I'm choosing him over you, Park Jun had said, his eyes filled with pain. But I'm not. I'm doing this so we can have a real future. One where we're not looking over our shoulders every second. Dakia understood logically, but emotionally it hurt like hell. She didn't see Park Jun at all during those 2 weeks. No texts, no calls, no surprise visits. At work, she threw herself into her job, trying not to think about him. But every night, she lay awake wondering if he was okay. Wondering if she'd made a mistake trusting him. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, everything went wrong. Dakia was leaving the hospital after her shift when a sleek silver car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down and a beautiful Korean woman looked out. She had perfect features, designer clothes, and eyes like chips of ice. "You must be Dakia," the woman said, her voice smooth as silk. "Get in, we need to talk." "I don't know you," Dakia said, gripping her bag tighter. "My name is Soojin Park," the woman said. "I'm Park Jun's fiancé." The words hit Dakia like a physical blow. "His what?" "Fiancé," Soojin repeated, smiling coldly. "Didn't he tell you? Our families arranged our marriage years ago. I've been in Korea finishing my business degree, but now I'm back. Time for Park Jun to honor his commitments." "You're lying," Dakia said, but doubt crept into her voice. Park Jun had been gone for 2 weeks. What if this was why? "Am I?" Soojin pulled out her phone and showed Dakia a photo. It was recent, maybe a few days old. Park Jun stood beside Soojin at some formal event, both of them dressed elegantly. Soojin's hand rested possessively on Park Jun's arm. Dakia's stomach twisted. "That doesn't mean anything." "It means he belongs to me," Soojin said simply. "It means you were a temporary distraction." Little rebellion before he settles into his real life. She leaned forward. "Let me give you some advice, nurse. Go back to your simple life. Find a simple man. Park Jun isn't for you. He never was." Before Dakia could respond, Soojin's window rolled up, and the car drove away. Dakia stood on the sidewalk, rain starting to fall, feeling like her world was crumbling. Was it true? Had Park Jun been lying to her this whole time? She went home and stared at her phone for hours. Should she call him? Demand answers? But he'd told her not to contact him during these 2 weeks, said it was for her safety. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence that felt like torture. Dakia went to work, came home, and tried not to fall apart. She saw Soojin twice more, always from a distance. Once outside the hospital, once at the grocery store. The woman was following her, making her presence known. A constant reminder that Dakia didn't belong in Park Jun's world. Then, on Friday night, Dae showed up at her apartment. "Get dressed," he said without preamble. "Something's happened." "What? What happened?" Dakia's heart raced with fear. "Park Jun's in trouble. Real trouble. His father found out about his betrayal and sent him on a suicide mission to Detroit. He's supposed to meet with the Petrov family, a Russian gang that's been at war with Min Jun for months. It's a trap." "Why are you telling me this?" Dakia asked suspiciously. "You work for his father." "I work for whoever pays me," Dae said bluntly. "But I've known Park Jun since he was a kid. He's strange and difficult, but he's not evil like his father. I won't watch him die in some warehouse because Min Jun is too proud to accept that his son is his own person." "Where is he?" Dakia demanded. "Detroit. Warehouse on the east side. But you can't help him. You'll just get yourself killed." "Tell me where," Dakia said, grabbing her coat. Dae stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid." "Maybe both," Dakia said. "Now tell me where." The drive to Detroit took 3 hours. Dae drove while explaining the situation. Min Jun had discovered Park Jun was feeding information to federal investigators. His punishment was sending Park Jun to negotiate with the Petrovs, supposedly to arrange a truce. But Min Jun had secretly told the Petrovs that Park Jun was authorized to make major concessions, which would make him look weak. The Petrovs would see it as an opportunity to eliminate a future threat. "Why would they want to kill him?" Dakia asked. "Because Park Jun's smart," Dae said. "Too smart. Every organization in Chicago knows that if he ever takes over his father's empire, he'll be unstoppable. His ability to see patterns, to predict moves, to analyze situations makes him dangerous. Better to kill him now, while they have the chance." They reached the warehouse just after midnight. It was in an abandoned industrial area, surrounded by empty buildings and broken streetlights. Day parked a block away. He's in there with 4 Petrov soldiers, Day said. I can't go in. Minjun has people watching to make sure I don't interfere. Then I'll go, Dakia said. You'll die, Day said flatly. Maybe, Dakia said, opening the car door. But I'm not letting him face this alone. She ran toward the warehouse, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Through a grimy window she could see figures moving inside. She heard voices, angry and threatening. Then she heard Park Jun's voice, calm and analytical. Your plan has 3 major flaws. First, you're standing in a pattern that leaves your left side vulnerable. Second, your weapons are outdated Makarov pistols with a high jam rate. Third, you assume I came here alone and unprepared. A laugh. You came here with no backup, boy. You're dead. Dakia didn't think. She ran to where Dee had parked, jumped in the driver's seat and started the engine. Day yelled something, but she didn't hear it. She slammed her foot on the gas and drove straight toward the warehouse. The car crashed through the metal door with a deafening screech of tearing metal. Men shouted and dove out of the way. Dakia's airbag exploded, momentarily stunning her. When her vision cleared, she saw chaos. Park Jun moved like water through the distracted men. He wasn't a trained fighter, but his ability to see patterns made him unpredictable. He dodged before they swung, moved before they aimed. Within seconds, 2 men were on the ground. But there were still 2 more, and one of them grabbed Dakia as she climbed out of the wrecked car. Well, well, the man said, pressing a gun to her temple. Look what we have here. Everything stopped. Park Jun froze, his eyes locked on Dakia. For the first time since she'd met him, she saw pure terror on his face. Let her go, Park Jun said, his voice shaking. This is between us. New plan, the man holding Dakia said. You stand there and watch her die, then we kill you. Time seemed to slow down. Dakia saw the man's finger start to squeeze the trigger. Saw Park Jun's face twist with anguish, saw her life about to end. Then Dai appeared from nowhere and tackled the man holding her. The gun went off, the bullet hitting the ceiling. Dakia fell to the ground, her ears ringing. She looked up to see Park Jun fighting the last standing man. It was brutal and quick. Park Jun wasn't trying to be elegant or controlled anymore. He was fighting with desperate fury, protecting what was his. When it was over, 4 men lay unconscious or groaning on the ground. Park Jun stood in the center of the warehouse, breathing hard, blood on his knuckles. His eyes found Dakia. Are you insane? He shouted, running to her. You could have been killed. The probability of survival was less than 30%. I didn't care about probability, Dakia shouted back. I cared about you. Park Jun pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. You terrify me, he whispered into her hair. You make me feel things I can't calculate or predict. You make me vulnerable. Good, Dakia said, pulling back to look at his face. You make me feel the same way. They kissed desperately, both shaking with adrenaline and relief. When they broke apart, Day was watching them with an expression that might have been approval. We need to leave, he said. Police will be here soon, and questions will be asked. They drove back to Chicago in silence. Park Jun held Dakia's hand the entire time, occasionally raising it to his lips to kiss her knuckles. Like he needed to keep confirming she was real, that she was safe. When they reached Dakia's apartment, Park Jun followed her inside. The moment the door closed, they were on each other. Clothes hit the floor. Hands explored desperately. They made it to the bedroom, and their coming together was fierce and urgent. Park Jun made love to her like he was afraid she'd disappear. His hands mapped every inch of her skin. His mouth tasted every curve. He whispered her name between kisses, told her she was beautiful, told her she was brave, told her she was his. Afterwards, they lay tangled in her sheets, both covered in sweat and breathing hard. I met Sujin, Dakia said quietly. Park Jun's body tensed. She found you. She said you're engaged. showed me photos of you together. Those photos were from a business dinner my father forced me to attend, Park Jun said. Soo-jin is the daughter of another crime family. My father wants to unite our organizations through marriage, but I never agreed to it. I never wanted her. She seemed very sure of herself, Dakia said. Soo-jin has been obsessed with this marriage for years, Park Jun said. Not because she wants me, but because she wants the power and status. She sees me as a prize to be won. He turned to face Dakia, his eyes intense. But I'm not a prize. I'm not property. I'm a man who knows exactly what he wants. And what I want is you. Your father will never accept that, Dakia said. I know, Park Jun said. That's why I'm going to destroy him. The next morning, Park Jun explained everything. For months, he'd been working with FBI agent Marcus Wells, feeding him information about his father's operations. Every transaction, every deal, every crime. Park Jun's perfect memory and pattern recognition made him the perfect witness. He could testify about things that happened years ago with perfect accuracy. The FBI is ready to move, Park Jun said, sitting at Dakia's small kitchen table. They have enough evidence to bring down my father's entire organization, but they need one more thing. What? Dakia asked. They need proof of his involvement in a murder from 5 years ago. A federal prosecutor named David Chen who was investigating organized crime. My father ordered the hit. But there's no evidence connecting him directly. Without it, a good lawyer might get him a reduced sentence instead of life in prison. Where's the evidence? Dakia asked. In my father's personal safe at the estate, Park Jun said. He keeps trophies from his biggest victories. I've seen the file, photos, payment records, everything. Can't the FBI just raid the place? Dakia asked. They need a warrant based on probable cause, Park Jun said. And my testimony alone isn't enough for a judge to authorize searching his personal safe. I need to get the evidence out myself. That's suicide, Dakia said, her blood running cold. After what happened in Detroit, your father knows you betrayed him. The estate will be locked down. I know, Park Jun said quietly. But it's the only way. Over the next week, Park Jun planned his move. He avoided his father's calls, stayed hidden, and coordinated with Agent Wells. The plan was simple but dangerous. Park Jun would go to the estate during a party his father was throwing, use the distraction to access the safe, and get out before anyone noticed. Dakia hated every part of the plan. Let me come with you, she begged. No, Park Jun said firmly. If something goes wrong, I need to know you're safe. And what if something happens to you? Dakia demanded. What am I supposed to do then? Park Jun pulled her close. If I don't make it out, Agent Wells has instructions to protect you. You'll be relocated given a new identity. You'll be safe. I don't want to be safe, Dakia said, tears streaming down her face. I want to be with you. And you will be, Park Jun promised. After tonight, this will all be over. We can have a normal life. No more hiding. No more danger. But Dakia couldn't shake the feeling that something was going to go terribly wrong. The night of the party arrived. Park Jun dressed in an expensive suit, looking every inch the billionaire's son. Before he left, he kissed Dakia long and deep. I love you, he said. It was the first time he'd said those words. I've analyzed my feelings from every angle, and that's the only logical conclusion. I love you, Dakia. I love you too, Dakia whispered. Please come back to me. I will, Park Jun promised. I always will. Then he was gone. Dakia waited in her apartment, pacing and checking her phone every 30 seconds. Agent Wells had given her a number to call if she didn't hear from Park Jun by midnight. She watched the clock tick by with agonizing slowness. At 10 p.m., someone knocked on her door. Dakia rushed to open it, hoping desperately it was Park Jun. Instead, Soo-jin stood in the hallway, her expression triumphant. He's not coming back, Soo-jin said without preamble. What are you talking about? Dakia demanded. Park Jun, Sujin said, walking uninvited into the apartment. He's at the estate right now, but not for the reason you think. He's not stealing evidence. He's making peace with his father. You're lying, Dakia said. Am I? Sujin pulled out her phone and showed Dakia a live video feed. It showed Park Jun at the party, talking to his father. Minjun had his arm around Park Jun's shoulders, smiling. They looked like a normal father and son. Dakia's heart sank. How did you get this? I have my sources, Sujin said smugly. The truth is, Park Jun was never going to betray his father. Not really. He was using you, Dakia. Using your feelings for him to distract people from his real plans. And now that he doesn't need you anymore, he's going back to where he belongs, with his family. With me. I don't believe you, Dakia said. But doubt crept in. Why would Park Jun look so comfortable with his father if he was there to betray him? Believe what you want, Sujin said, heading for the door. But when midnight comes, and he still hasn't contacted you, you'll know the truth. You were just a distraction, a temporary amusement. Nothing more. After Sujin left, Dakia stood frozen in her apartment. She wanted to believe in Park Jun, wanted to trust that everything he'd told her was true. But the image of him smiling with his father burned in her mind. The hours crawled by. 11 p.m. came and went, then 11:30. Dakia called Agent Wells, but it went to voicemail. She called Park Jun's phone. No answer. At 11:45, her apartment door burst open. Day stood there, blood on his shirt and wild panic in his eyes. We need to leave, now. What happened? Dakia demanded. It was a trap, Day said, grabbing her arm. The whole thing was a setup. Sujin told Minjun about Park Jun's plan. When Park Jun went for the safe, they were waiting for him. Dakia's world tilted. Where is he? Being held at the estate, Day said. Minjun is deciding whether to kill him or lock him up forever. Either way, you're in danger. Minjun knows you were involved. He's sending people here right now. I'm not leaving without Park Jun, Dakia said fiercely. You can't help him if you're dead, Dae argued, but Dakia was already grabbing her coat. Then we go get him. Right now. That's insane, Dae said. I've done insane things before, Dakia shot back, and they worked out fine. Now are you going to help me or not? Dae stared at her for a long moment, then cursed in Korean. You're as crazy as he is. Fine, but we do this my way. They left the apartment and got into Dae's car. As they pulled away, Dakia saw two black SUVs turning onto her street. Minjun's men. Just minutes too late. What's the plan? Dakia asked as Dae drove at breakneck speed through Chicago's streets. I know a way into the estate that security doesn't watch, Dae said. Old service entrance from when the property was a hotel. If we're lucky, we can get in and out before anyone notices. And if we're not lucky? Dakia asked. Then we're both dead, Dae said, bluntly. Along with Park Jun. They reached the estate and parked a block away. Dae led Dakia through shadows to a hidden entrance covered by overgrown bushes. The door was locked, but Dae had a key. I've been planning an exit strategy for years, he admitted. Never thought I'd use it for a rescue mission. Inside, the estate was chaos. People ran back and forth, shouting orders. Something had gone wrong with Minjun's plan, but Dakia couldn't tell what. This way, Dae whispered, leading her down a back corridor. They found Park Jun in a windowless room in the basement. He was tied to a chair, his face bruised and bloody, but his eyes were clear and aware. Dakia? He said, shock crossing his features. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be safe. Not without you, Dakia said, running to him. She worked on the ropes binding his wrists while Dae kept watch at the door. This is going to make the probability of successful escape drop significantly, Park Jun said, but he was smiling through split lips. I don't care about probability, Dakia said, finally freeing his hands. I care about you. We need to move, Dae hissed from the doorway. Now. They ran through the corridors, Park Jun stumbling from his injuries. Alarms started blaring. They'd been discovered. There! Someone shouted behind them. Gunshots echoed in the hallway. Dai returned fire, providing cover as they ran. They burst out of the service entrance into the night air. But they weren't alone. Min Jun stood in the courtyard with a dozen armed men, and beside him, looking perfectly composed, was Soo-jin. Going somewhere, son? Min Jun asked coldly. Park Jun pushed Dakia behind him protectively. This is between us, father. Let her go. I don't think so, Min Jun said. You've caused me a significant amount of trouble. Cost me money, reputation, and respect. I think it's time you learned what happens when you betray family. He raised his gun and pointed it directly at Dakia. No, Park Jun shouted. But before Min Jun could fire, Soo-jin moved. She grabbed Min Jun's arm and the gun went off, the bullet hitting the ground. Not yet, Soo-jin said to Min Jun. Her voice was different now. Colder, more controlled. I have a better idea. She turned to face them, and Dakia saw something terrifying in her eyes. Something calculating and cruel. You see? Soo-jin said, pulling out her own gun. I'm not here to marry Park Jun. I'm here to take over both your organizations. She pointed the gun at Min Jun, starting with eliminating the old guard. Min Jun's eyes widened with shock just before Soo-jin pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the night and everything descended into chaos. Min Jun crumpled to the ground, blood spreading across his expensive suit. For a moment, everyone stood frozen in shock. Then chaos erupted. Min Jun's guards didn't know who to shoot at. Some aimed at Soo-jin, others at Park Jun, confused about who had actually betrayed their boss. Run! Dae shouted, firing at the guards as he shoved Dakia and Park Jun toward the gate. Soo-jin laughed, a cold sound that cut through the night. You think you can escape? I've planned this for years. Every exit is blocked. Every guard is either loyal to me or dead. Bullets whizzed past Dakia's head as they ran. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might explode. Park Jun gripped her hand, pulling her along despite his injuries. They made it to the gate, but Soo-jin was right. Armed men blocked their path. Behind the fountain! Dae yelled. They dove behind a massive marble fountain in the courtyard. Water sprayed everywhere as bullets hit the stone, chipping away pieces. We're trapped, Dakia said, breathing hard. Not yet, Park Jun said. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and made a call. Agent Wells, we need backup now. The estate. Soo-jin Park just murdered Min Jun. She's taking over the organization. Dakia heard sirens in the distance. The FBI had been waiting nearby, ready to move once they had their evidence. But would they arrive in time? Give up, Park Jun, Soo-jin called out. You're surrounded. There's nowhere to go. Why are you doing this? Park Jun shouted back. You had everything. Your family's organization, your wealth. Had? Soo-jin said bitterly. Past tense. My father was weak. He was going to surrender to the FBI, turn himself in for a lighter sentence. He would have destroyed everything our family built. So I eliminated him last month and made it look like a rival hit. Dakia's blood ran cold. Soo-jin had killed her own father. I needed your father's organization to expand my power, Soo-jin continued. The marriage was supposed to unite our families under my control. But you had to fall in love with some random nurse and ruin everything. So now I'll take it all by force. More gunshots. Dae returned fire, but they were running out of ammunition. I have a plan, Park Jun said quietly to Dakia. But you're not going to like it. What kind of plan? Dakia demanded. I'm going to surrender to her, Park Jun said. Draw her attention while you and Dae escape. Absolutely not, Dakia said fiercely. We're not separating. Dakia, please, Park Jun said, cupping her face. I've calculated every possible outcome. This is the only scenario where you survive with certainty. I don't care about certainty, Dakia shouted. We survive together or not at all. The sirens grew louder. FBI vehicles screeched into the driveway, agents pouring out with weapons drawn. FBI, drop your weapons. But Sujin wasn't finished. She grabbed one of Minjun's guards and used him as a human shield, backing toward the house. You want a war? I'll give you a war. She fired wildly. Agents scattered for cover. In the chaos, Sujin's eyes locked on Dakia with pure hatred. This is all your fault, Sujin screamed. You ruined everything. She raised her gun, pointing directly at Dakia's head. Time seemed to slow down. Dakia saw Sujin's fingers squeeze the trigger. Saw the muzzle flash. Heard Park Jun scream her name. Then Park Jun threw himself in front of her. The bullet hit him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He fell against Dakia, blood soaking through his shirt. No. Dakia caught him as he collapsed. No, Park Jun, stay with me. I'm okay, Park Jun said through gritted teeth. The bullet hit my shoulder, not fatal. Probability of survival is 97%. Stop calculating and stay conscious. Dakia pressed her hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. FBI agents swarmed Sujin. She fought like a wild animal, but they overpowered her. Within seconds, she was face down on the ground in handcuffs, screaming threats and curses. An ambulance arrived. Paramedics rushed to Park Jun, loading him onto a stretcher. Dakia climbed in beside him, refusing to leave his side. Ma'am, are you injured? A paramedic asked. I'm a nurse, Dakia said, and I'm not leaving him, so let's go. At the hospital, doctors rushed Park Jun into surgery. Dakia paced the waiting room, her hands still covered in his blood. Dai sat in the corner, a bandage on his arm from a graze wound. He's going to be fine, Dai said quietly. Park Jun's too stubborn to die. He took a bullet for me, Dakia said, her voice breaking. He didn't even hesitate. That's love, Dai said simply. The real kind. The kind worth dying for. Agent Wells arrived an hour later. We arrested 37 people tonight. Sujin's entire operation is dismantled. Between her confession and the evidence Park Jun gathered, we have enough to put her away for life. Multiple murders, conspiracy, racketeering, everything. What about Park Jun? Dakia asked. Will he face charges? He was working with us, Agent Wells said. He's a witness, not a criminal. Once he recovers, he'll testify. After that, he's free. Completely free. Dakia felt tears stream down her face. He's really free? Thanks to him, we've dismantled 2 major crime families in one night, Agent Wells said. He's a hero, whether he sees himself that way or not. The surgery took 3 hours. When the doctor finally emerged, Dakia jumped to her feet. He's stable, the doctor said. The bullet missed major arteries. He'll need physical therapy, but he should make a full recovery. Can I see him? Dakia asked. He's asking for you, the doctor said with a smile. Won't stop asking, actually. Something about calculating the probability of you being here? Dakia rushed to Park Jun's room. He lay in the hospital bed, pale but awake. His shoulder was heavily bandaged and monitors beeped steadily beside him. Hey, she said softly, taking his hand. Hey, Park Jun said. His voice was rough, but his eyes were clear. Did we win? We won, Dakia. I confirmed. Sujin's arrested. Your father's organization is finished. It's over. Good, Park Jun said. He squeezed her hand. I was 93% certain I positioned myself correctly to minimize damage from the bullet. The 7% uncertainty was unpleasant. Dakia laughed through her tears. You're impossible. You know that. You've mentioned it before, Park Jun said, that almost smile crossing his face. But you love me anyway. I do, Dakia said, leaning down to kiss him gently. I really, really do. I love you too, Park Jun said. I've analyzed my feelings from every possible angle, and that's still the only logical conclusion. They stayed like that for a long moment, just holding each other. Outside the window, dawn was breaking over Chicago. A new day, a new beginning. 3 months later, Park Jun was fully healed. The FBI trials were ongoing, but he'd already given his testimony. Soo Jin was facing multiple life sentences without parole. Min Jun had survived his gunshot wound but was also in prison, awaiting trial. Park Jun sold his father's estate and all the businesses, donating most of the money to charity. He kept enough to start his own company, a tech firm that created tools and apps for people with autism. His first product was an app that helped people navigate overwhelming sensory environments. It became wildly successful within weeks. Dakia continued working as a nurse, but now she also ran a foundation helping African immigrants in Chicago. Park Jun funded it completely, telling her that investing in people who helped others was the smartest investment he could make. They moved into a quiet apartment together in a peaceful neighborhood. Nothing fancy or enormous, just a comfortable space where they could build their life together. One evening, 6 months after the night at the estate, Park Jun took Dakia to the hotel where they'd first met. "Why are we here?" Dakia asked as they entered the ballroom. "Because this is where everything started," Park Jun said. "This is where I saw you and my entire life changed direction." The ballroom was empty except for soft music playing from hidden speakers. Park Jun had rented the entire space just for them. "Dance with me," he said, holding out his hand. Dakia took it, and they moved together across the floor. So much had changed since that first dance. They'd faced danger, betrayal, violence. They'd nearly lost each other more than once, but they'd survived. Together. "I have something to tell you," Park Jun said as they swayed to the music. "I've run the calculations 10,000 times. I've analyzed every possible variable, every potential outcome, every scenario I can imagine." "And?" Dakia asked, smiling up at him. "And in every single simulation, in every possible future, the only outcome that makes sense is spending the rest of my life with you." Park Jun stopped dancing and dropped to one knee, pulling out his small velvet box. "Will you marry me, Dakia?" Dakia's heart stopped. Inside the box was a beautiful ring, simple but perfect. A single diamond that caught the light and sparkled like a star. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." Park Jun slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. They kissed deeply, passionately, celebrating this new chapter of their life. "I can't promise everything will be easy," Park Jun said against her lips. "I'm still learning how to be in a relationship. I still see the world differently than most people." "Good," Dakia said fiercely. "I don't want easy. I don't want normal. I want you, exactly as you are." "That's fortunate," Park Jun said with his rare, beautiful smile. "Because you're stuck with me now." They married 3 months later in a ceremony that blended Kenyan and Korean traditions. Dakia's family flew in from Nairobi, crying tears of joy. Day stood as Park Jun's best man, looking uncomfortable in a tuxedo but genuinely happy. Even Agent Wells attended, joking that it was the best outcome from any case he'd ever worked. The reception was small and intimate, held in a garden with soft lighting and gentle music. Park Jun had made sure every detail was perfect, from the temperature of the room to the volume of the speakers. When they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Park Jun whispered in Dakia's ear, "My heart rate is elevated, my palms are sweating. I feel overwhelming happiness combined with mild anxiety about the future. According to my calculations, this is what perfect feels like." Dakia laughed, pulling him closer. "Your calculations are correct." 1 year later, Dakia discovered she was pregnant. Park Jun immediately began preparing for fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to everything. He read every parenting book available, attended every doctor's appointment, and built a detailed spreadsheet tracking the baby's development. "You're going to be an amazing father," Dakia told him one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her growing belly. "I'm terrified," Park Jun admitted. "What if I can't connect with our child? What if they need something I can't provide?" "Then we'll figure it out together," Dakia said firmly, just like we've figured out everything else. Their daughter was born on a sunny morning in May. They named her Amara, which meant grace in Igbo. She had Park Jun's dark eyes and Dakia's bright smile. The moment Park Jun held her for the first time, tears streamed down his face. She's perfect, he whispered. Absolutely perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, healthy heartbeat. But more than that, she's ours. She's ours, Dakia agreed, watching the two loves of her life with a full heart. As the sun set over Chicago, Dakia reflected on everything that had brought them to this moment. The dangerous charity party, the forbidden romance, the violence and betrayal, the impossible choices and desperate rescues. It had been terrifying and difficult and sometimes seemed completely impossible. But looking at Park Jun holding their daughter, both of them bathed in golden light, Dakia knew every struggle had been worth it. They'd found something real in a world full of lies. They'd built something beautiful from broken pieces. They'd chosen love when fear would have been easier. And now, they had forever. If you loved Dakia and Park Jun's journey from a dangerous dance to forever love, then hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another passionate romance story. Also, don't forget to drop a comment below, telling us where you're watching from and what you thought about their wild ride. What were your expectations? And what changes will you make to the story if you were the author? Thank you for watching, and see you in my next video.